But first, turning to America's strengthening economy, Friday's record-breaking market, and President Trump's point man on economic policy. The stock market soared on Friday to all-time highs, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average closing above the 50,000 mark for the first time ever, amidst a backdrop of better-than-expected economic growth, strong earnings, and expectations of a productivity and consumer boom this year. Just 2 months away from tax day, when citizens are expected to receive thousands of dollars in refund checks, as the president's signature legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill, impacts citizens and businesses across the country. As you can see, stocks as well as gold prices rallied across the board on Friday. Here's the president this past week and after the closing bell on Friday. Watch.
As you probably saw today, the stock market, the Dow, just hit 50,000, 3 years ahead of schedule. They said probably couldn't be done in the 4-year period. We did it in 1 year. So we're 3 years ahead of schedule, broke an all-time record, 50,000, which they say couldn't happen.
The president later on Truth Social predicted that the market will double to 100,000 by the end of his term in January 2029. The economy grew almost 5% in the fourth quarter, much better than expected. But worries do remain about AI efficiencies replacing jobs and still crippling inflation, which remains above the Federal Reserve's target. As the president's pick for the next chairman of the Fed, Kevin Warsh, faces pushback from at least one Republican, outgoing Senator Tom Tillis, ahead of Warsh's confirmation process expected in the coming months. We will get the January jobs report this upcoming Wednesday, after it was delayed because of the government shutdown, as we await whether the Department of Homeland Security will shut down this upcoming Friday because of Democrat demands of changes to the president's immigration enforcement. Still no acknowledgement from the Democrats on the high cost of goods, beginning with the Biden administration, which of course resulted in overall inflation at 21.5%. That was a 40-year high due to $7 trillion in spending during the prior Biden years. Instead, Senate Democrats pounced on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this week during a heated Senate Banking Committee hearing. Watch this.
Reclaiming my time.
Was a mass unfettered immigration.
Mr. Chair, will you let him know that when I asked him
time does belong to the gentlewoman from California.
10 and 20 million immigrants
Can you
took
shut
up the
him
housing stock of working Americans. And can you maintain some level of dignity?
Gentlelady's time has expired.
No, my time has not expired.
Mr. Secretary, can you commit right here and now that Trump's Fed nominee, Kevin Warsh, will not be sued, will not be investigated by the Department of Justice if he doesn't cut interest rates exactly the way that Donald Trump wants?
That is up to the president. Can you commit that you will?
I'm sorry.
Can you commit that you will not hold up?
He won't be sued if he doesn't drop interest rates.
And
he won't be criminally investigated.
The president also made a big joke about you that I won't repeat, Senator Warren.
That was the
Well, actually, I will.
one.
He said he had reservations.
You know, if this was a joke, why not just say so?
It was a joke, and he made a joke about you too, Senator Warren.
Joining me now, the man himself, our nation's 79th Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Maria, good to be with you.
And that Senate hearing really went into wild commentary there. Did any of the Democrats ask you about economic growth, sir?
Maria, they can't compete on economic growth because the president's plan is working. The Trump economy is delivering for the American people, that we have strong growth, and inflation is, in fact, coming down. For the past 3 months, inflation is 2.1%, close to the Federal Reserve's target, and a measure called trueflation, which is daily observations, now is below 1%. So inflation down, strong growth, stocks at a record high, and the lowest crime rate in over 100 years. Democrats don't want to talk about that. They want to hoot and holler.
So what kind of growth are you expecting for 2026? We're looking at Friday's market rally. The Dow was up 1,200 points, 2.5%. The NASDAQ was up 1%. Even gold was up. And when you look at year to date, actually gold has outperformed stocks. Gold up 14% year to date. The S&P 500 up 1%. Tell us your expectations for growth and also a word on gold. What's driving that move as well?
Well, Maria, what I can tell you is what we are seeing the cyclical components of the market expand. So that's why the Dow hit a new high. But importantly, the Russell, which is a small cap index, has hit a new high. We're seeing the industrial sectors under the market hit new highs. And in my 35, 40 years on Wall Street, that tells me Wall Street is telling you that Main Street is about to prosper. We are seeing a big cyclical recovery. The president's agenda set the table in 2025, and now the American people are going to benefit in 26. And that's what the stock market is telling us. The stock market lives in the future, and I think we're going to have very strong economic growth and very strong job gains and very strong real income growth.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the move in gold, normally people buy gold and hard assets because they're not sure. They're sort of hedging their bets. But there's also a big move in rare earth and critical minerals as the president comes up with this stockpile to compete against China. Is that part of it? What do you think's behind the gold move?
Well, the gold move, things have gotten a little unruly in China. They're having to tighten margin requirements. So the gold looks to me kind of like a classical speculative blow-off. But what I will tell you, we had at the State Department, there was a rare earth ministerial, countries all around the world. This is what U.S. leadership looks like. The U.S. is leading in solving this rare earth problem. Countries are not sovereign. You are not sovereign if one country can control your supply chains, and we are making our supply chains resilient.
Yeah, for sure. There are worries, however, Secretary, and of course it's about AI. We've already seen companies cut jobs because of AI efficiencies. What is the plan from your standpoint at Treasury, at the White House, to replace the jobs that will no doubt go away because of AI efficiencies?
Well, Maria, it's not a given that they have to go away because of AI efficiencies. In the history of technological change, you see new jobs created. I had a major credit card company in a few weeks ago, and they just said it was the distribution of jobs within the company that's going to change. They said that their billing and customer service, AI is going to take over, but they're going to move all those employees over into their travel sector.
Okay. Well, we're also waiting on some big decisions. I mean, we've got to see the Kevin Warsh confirmation happen. We've got to hear from the Supreme Court on whether or not President Trump can use tariffs in an emergency. What are your expectations? When will we hear from the Supreme Court? And I know that you've told me before you think that you are going to win on this, but what's the plan if you don't, if the Supreme Court rules against the president?
Well, it would be a gigantic loss for the American people. President Trump has used his IEEPA authority consistently throughout the year to negotiate better deals for the American people. And it's an emergency authority. And what was an emergency if it wasn't the fentanyl crisis? And we are seeing Canada, Mexico, China come to the table to stop this scourge of the American people. On October 8th, when China threatened to institute a rare earth export control all around the world for not just us, but all the industrial nations, President Trump threatened a 100% tariff, and China came to the negotiating table and delayed the export controls, which would have crushed the global economy. So President Trump has used it for the American people, and it would be a big loss to take that away from him.
Yeah, I always scratch my head in terms of how it is that we deal with our number one adversary, China, in a business-like fashion when, over here we're finding a biolab in California. Over there we're arresting people for bringing in pathogens, COVID, cover-up, intellectual property theft, the whole 9 yards. Secretary, you told me...
Maria, I would add, too, the president has used IEEPA to bring in trillions of dollars of investment into the U.S. Companies are now... 2025, they worked on the plans to build their factories. Many have already broken ground. I think we're going to see record factory groundbreakings in 2026. The president and I were out in Iowa a few weeks ago, and John May, the president of John Deere, said that John Deere is building 2 new factories, one in Indiana, one in North Carolina, and the president said, why are you doing that? And he said, sir, 100% your tariff policy.
Yeah. Well, I know that the president has done really an incredible job in terms of recognizing we cannot be reliant on China, our #1 adversary. Do you have any estimate for us as far as when we are going to see that China trade deal in writing?
No, but I can tell you that the Chinese have lived up to their end of the bargain. They've completed their soybean purchases, and I was on the call with President Trump, Party Chair Xi. And again, very, very important, the relationship between the 2 leaders. And it's my belief that President Trump is the only world leader who Xi respects. And that relationship between the 2 of them allows for the relationship to be respectful, but we're going to be great competitors with them. We don't want to disengage, but we do need to de-risk.
What about Kevin Warsh? Tom Tillis has been pushing back. He says he's not going to confirm anybody for the president until the probe into Jay Powell is over. What are your expectations that Kevin Warsh is confirmed, and when do you expect that?
Well, I would point out that when Kevin Warsh was up to be a governor of the Fed, he got 100 votes, and that was led by his home state senator, Chuck Schumer. So, and Senator Tillis has come out and said he thinks that Kevin Warsh is a very strong candidate. So I would say, why don't we get the hearings underway and see where Jeanine Pirro's investigation goes?
Okay. Look, there's also increasing worry about the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Obviously, after the 2008 financial crisis, the Fed unleashed all of these extraordinary monetary policy tools. They call it quantitative easing. But you've now have been able to fix things in just over a year at the Treasury, you and the White House with your new policies. Now that we've got growth as a priority and you've got the economy where you want it as you rein in inflation, is it fair to say that the Federal Reserve's adoption of these large-scale asset purchases should be wound down?
Again, that'll be up to the Fed in terms of what they want to do with the balance sheet. I wouldn't expect them to do anything quickly. They've moved to an ample regime policy, and that does require a larger balance sheet. So, I would think that they'll probably sit back, take at least a year to decide what they want to do. It's pretty clear to me. I wrote a 7,000-word essay in the International Economy magazine. I called it gain of function monetary policy.
That's right.
Saying that the Fed had gotten kind of out of control. And I think that Kevin Warsh is going to be very independent, but mindful that the Fed is accountable to the American people.
Real quick on this crypto legislation that seems to be hung up in the Senate. Secretary, do you expect that the Clarity Act will, in fact, come back for a markup? And why are we having a debate about bank margins? Where do you stand on this? Do you think crypto platforms should be able to pay rewards, pay customers for moving stablecoin or money out of traditional bank deposit accounts and keep them on crypto platforms? Where are you on that issue?
Again, Maria, I think what we're seeing in the crypto market over the past few months means more than ever that the U.S., we need market structure, we need clarity, and we need to get this across the line this spring. We got a few recalcitrant actors who said, well, it'd be better to have no legislation than the legislation we don't want. And I think both on the banks, the other crypto firms are united against them. So we need to get this across the line. The U.S., under President Trump's leadership, the U.S. is becoming the crypto capital of the world with our best practices, best regulation. And for crypto to remain a viable digital asset and move forward, we need to get this Clarity Act done.
So you think it will be? It'll come back fairly soon then?
I'm optimistic, and there's bipartisan support here.
Yeah, okay. Real quick on Iran, that's your portfolio, right? Sanctions. Do sanctions really work, Secretary? Because a lot of people telling me, look, sanctions don't work at all, and the people of Iran want President Trump to do something more. Is there anything else we should expect in terms of the president getting involved in the regime killing its citizens?
Well, I can tell you, Maria, what doesn't work is handing the regime pallets of cash like we saw in Democratic administration. Last March, President Trump instructed me to use the authorities of Treasury to put maximum pressure on Iran. And what we saw by December, and this is the sanctioning the oil sales, tracking down the money. And what we saw because of that in December, one of the largest banks in Iran collapsed. The central bank had to bail them out, and they ended up with massive inflation, which has led to economic chaos. Their currencies collapsed. And I can tell you, Maria, what we are seeing is the rats are leaving the ship. The Iranian leadership is wiring money out like crazy. And what we are going to do at Treasury is we're going to get that money back for the Iranian people when there is a solution to this problem.
And real quick, I know you just did a trade deal with India, but you wanted to mention Japan.
Yep. Well, Japan, the prime minister called a snap election, the quickest snap election in Japanese history. And boy, has she had a big victory today. She's going to have 2/3 majority in the upper house. President Trump endorsed her last week. She is a great ally, great relationship with the president. And when Japan is strong, the U.S. is strong in Asia.
Okay, we will leave it there. Of course, another partially China story there as Japan and the U.S. partner. Good to see you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.